Everybody. I'm making this video for everybody who is not going to make it to class today. I'd like to open with a reflection from our university, a place where liberal values and diversity are celebrated, or at least you'd imagine they are. Yet I've observed moments that challenge this ideal, moments that have prompted me to question the underlying dynamics of our interactions. Consider the meetings where insights from women and people of color are often met with skepticism, only to be validated when reiterated by someone like me, a white male. This recurrent theme became starkly evident through my interaction with my colleague Jenna. She's a seasoned professional in defense and engineering whose clarity in conveying controlled and classified information, CUI requirements, is second to none. Despite her expertise, her solutions frequently face unjustifiable resistance. On several occasions, Jenna has sought my support to reaffirm her points, and I've noticed, with a measure of discomfort, that the same group of people who doubted her will accept the same idea from me without question. This pattern is disheartening and has led me to recognize a troubling yet often subconscious bias that lends undue authority to my voice over hers. As we navigate through today's presentation on diversity in engineering, I invite you to join me in a critical examination of these biases. We'll explore not just the ethical imperative, but also the intellectual necessity of valuing every voice based on its merits, not just the perceived authority of the speaker. It's time we align our practices with our principles, fostering an environment where diversity is genuinely synonymous with strength. Code of Ethics. Engineers in the fulfillment of their professional duties shall hold paramount the safety, health, and welfare of the public. Perform services only in areas of their competence. Issue public statements only in an objective and truthful manner. Act for each employer or client as a faithful agent or trustee. Avoid deceptive acts. Conduct themselves honorably, responsibly, ethically, and lawfully so as to enhance the honor, reputation, and usefulness of the profession. All right, so we need to talk about integrity, fairness, and dignity. It's imperative to recognize that these tenets are foundational to fostering an inclusive profession that embraces gender, racial, religious, cultural, and identity inclusion. Integrity in engineering goes beyond mere honesty. It's about creating a transparent culture where diverse perspectives are sought and valued. It's about ensuring that all voices, irrespective of gender or racial background, are heard and their contributions acknowledged. When we talk about transparency in practices, we're also referring to the visibility of diverse groups within engineering projects and initiatives, ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table. Fairness is the cornerstone of equitable treatment within the engineering field. It demands that we look beyond the traditional norms and actively seek to level the playing field for all, including those of different genders, races, religions, and cultures. Fairness in engineering means actively dismantling the barriers that prevent underrepresented groups from participating fully and equitably in the profession. Dignity is about respecting each other's individuals' inherent worth, not just about the profession, not just as profession. Oh my goodness. Dignity is about respecting each individual's inherent worth, not just as professionals, but as human beings with varied culture, religion, and personal identities. In engineering, this means creating environments that are not only safe, but also nurturing, where every individual feels valued and respected. It's about honoring the diverse background and life experiences that each person brings to the table, which in turn enriches the profession as a whole. By weaving these ethical principles with a commitment to diversity and inclusion, we not only adhere to the Engineering Code of Ethics, but also champion a broader, more inclusive vision of the profession. This approach ensures that engineering field benefits from the full spectrum of talent and perspective, leading to more innovative, cultural competent, and social responsible outcomes. Now, if we were in class today, I'd have everybody stand up, and then I'd ask everybody what their parents do. And if their parents are some kind of engineer or scientist, I'd have them sit down. And then I'd single out the people who are kind of roughing it themselves. Now, on this slide, we're talking about women. And women have a lot of trouble breaking into engineering, and it's an undue barrier. This barrier shouldn't exist. However, in the US, only about 14% of engineers are women. Now, there's an uptick, there's a silver lining to this problem. At URI, it's about 23% of engineers are women. That's good, but that statistic's a bit varied. And you don't see somebody that you can associate with, somebody you can assign your virtues to, doing the job you want to be doing. The chances that you'll end up doing that job go down. Now, growing up, the narrative within my family was clear and often repeated. Engineering is a formidable challenge. It's a path that, as I've been told and I have come to understand, is noticeably more demanding than many other academic pursuits on campus, like business. This wasn't merely an opinion, it was almost a family lore rooted in the story about my parents and my Uncle Steve. My mother once shared a tale from her college days, a conversation with my father fraught with anxiety about his academics. He was concerned that his grades weren't reflecting his efforts and feared that his prospect for future employment was dimming. Later, an almost echo of that concern, my Uncle Steve, my mother's brother, confided to my mother his own fears of academic failure. It was almost the same exact conversation. This exchange led my mother to the false but logical conclusion: if engineering was so hard that these two determined men feared failure, then surely she could fail without consequence. As the semester drew to a close, she decided to preemptively confess to my grandparents, preparing them for what she believed to be the inevitable disappointment. As she delicately broached the subject, both my father and Uncle Steve tried to get her to stop. They desperately signaled to her that she needed to stop doing what she was doing, which she misinterpreted as a shared embarrassment. With dramatic flair, she announced that all three of them had floundered facing the insurmountable rigor of their engineering courses. Keep in mind, my mother was an education major. To her surprise, and my dad and my uncle's relief, the truth was quite the opposite. Both had secured grades within the realms of A's and B's. The real challenge, it seemed, wasn't the course material itself, but the fear of not meeting their own high expectations. This family anecdote has since become a testament to a common experience I've noticed among engineers: the pervasive feeling of impending failure, regardless of actual performance. It serves as a reminder that sometimes our harshest critics is ourselves, and that even when we feel like we're struggling, we may very well be on the path to success. In the crucible of engineering studies, where the heat of rigorous coursework and the pressure to perform can forge doubt as much as it does skill, a common feeling pervades: the gnawing sense that we are not quite measuring up, that failure is just around the corner. I've been there, haunted by the specter of not being good enough, despite evidence to the contrary. What I've realized, though, is that this is a shared experience, a rite of passage almost for those of us who venture into the demanding field. In my college days, the voices behind me, the ones that said, "This is normal, you can do this," were like a beacon in the fog of my uncertainty. They were reminders that the path was difficult, not just for me, but for everyone, and that success was attainable. But not everyone hears those affirmations. Not everybody has the support system reassuring them that there is indeed a light at the end of the tunnel. This brings us to a pivotal understanding of the disparity we see in the gender and racial representation in engineering. It's not merely a matter of ability or interest. Often it's the absence of a support network, of voices that echo belief and confidence in one's potential, especially for women and people of color. The presence or lack thereof of mentors, role models, and peers who understand and affirm the journey can make a profound difference. It can mean the difference between persisting or withdrawing, between thriving or just surviving. As we delve into the presentation on diversity in engineering, let's recognize that supporting each other and ensuring that support is inclusive and accessible to all is not just an ethical imperative, it's a practical one. By bolstering the confidence of those who might otherwise falter, we don't just fill seats in a classroom or roles in a company. We empower future innovators and leaders who will push the boundaries of what's possible. So, I need to be clear. I have listed SWE, NISB, and SHIP these are not the only support networks on campus. These are the support networks I can fit on this slide. And if there are more support networks that you would like me to add to this list, by all means, I want to know about them. All three of these societies are very important to engineers as a whole, not just the specific groups they represent. These three organizations and all of the other support systems that are on campus are extremely important. They all more or less have the same purpose and structure. They have crafted mentorship programs that are the backbone of professional development for many engineers. These programs strategically match industry veterans with emerging talent, creating a nurturing environment for knowledge transfer and career guidance. Through these mentorships, newcomers gain invaluable insight into technical skills, industry norms, and professional networking, which are not always accessible through a traditional education path. Mentors provide a roadmap for career advancement, helping mentees navigate the complexities of the engineering field, identify opportunities, and set realistic career goals. These programs are pivotal in leveling the playing field, ensuring that all individuals, regardless of their background, have access to the same opportunities for growth and success. SWE, NISBE, and SHIP don't just talk about diversity, they actively push for it. They advocate for hiring practices that are inclusive, reaching out to broader talent pools and ensuring that the hiring process is free from bias. These societies are at the forefront for the fight for pay equality, championing the idea that equal work deserves equal pay, irrespective of gender or race. They also work tirelessly to influence the creation of workplace cultures that celebrate diversity. This includes advocating for policies that support work-life balance, cultural competence, and zero-tolerance approach to discrimination. These advocacies extend to ensuring fair representation at all levels of the engineering sector, from entry-level positions to executive boards, reflecting the true diversity of our society. SWE, NISBE, and SHIP understand that the journey to a more diverse engineering field begins in the community. They reach out to inspire young minds, particularly those from underrepresented groups, showcasing engineering as an attainable and rewarding career path. These societies provide resources, workshops, and educational programs that serve as support systems for students and aspiring engineers, helping to bridge the gap between interest and action. By actively engaging with the communities, these organizations affirm the value and potential of every individual, reinforcing the message that everyone deserves the opportunity to pursue their engineering dreams. The community programs initiatives by SWE, NISBE, and SHIP are reflections of integrity in action. They are not just talking about change, they are being the change, fostering a culture of honesty and ethical behavior in the engineering community. Their commitment to fairness is evident in their efforts to create equal opportunities for all, regardless of gender, race, or socioeconomic status. They strive to ensure that everyone has a fair chance to succeed in the engineering profession. These societies embody the principle of dignity by representing and valuing the unique perspective and contribution of each individual. They work to ensure that all engineering fields are not just diverse, but also inclusive and welcome to all. As engineers and students, it's crucial not to just support, but actively participate in the initiatives of SWE, NISBE, and SHIP. Your involvement can make a significant effort in driving their mission forward. Engaging with these societies is more than just a professional activity, it's a fulfillment of our ethical obligations. By participating, we contribute to the collective effort of shaping an equitable engineering landscape. Commitment to diversity and inclusion goes beyond fulfilling legal requirements. It's about actively contributing to a culture that values variety, perspectives, and experiences. As engineers, we have an ethical imperative to not only embrace diversity, but to be champions of it. This means advocating for the implementing practices that foster an inclusive environment where all talent can thrive. The responsibility of creating a diverse and inclusive field does not lie with the underrepresented groups alone. It is a collective responsibility that requires the active commitment of every engineer and engineering student. So this statistic I found interesting. I know there's a lot going on here, but generally what they found is a company that actively goes out of their way to be diverse tends to do better than a company that puts no effort in at all. They found that organizations that are closer to 50-50 gender-wise and are closer to the actual population distribution of the US in terms of race and religion fare better than the companies that don't, especially when the management also matches those statistics. Now, there's a handful of reasons as to why this happens. One of the big ones that I think is one of the drivers is, imagine Victoria's Secret. For a long time, the entire executive board was white males, and they only sold what they thought women wanted. However, in the past few years, they've changed that attitude, where they put women as executives at Victoria's Secret. And the women actually knew what women wanted and what they were willing to buy and how much they were willing to spend. And so that actually changed their business model. And so when you only have one group of people with one background deciding the path forward as to what the entire country wants, you get a very poor understanding of what the country actually wants. And so there is a lot of statistics supporting that a company will do better if they're diverse, both in gender and race and religion. Now, we need to talk about something that happens, unfortunately, too much. It's this concept of microaggressions. So I don't think anybody in the room is actively hating on any other group in the room. However, there are a handful of things that we all do from time to time, some more than others, and a lot of times it's by accident. But they happen, and they're upsetting, and we need to talk about them. We've all dealt with these microaggressions before in some way, shape, or form. However, the ones I'm about to talk about happen to women way more than they happen to men. So the first thing is, if we were in the classroom right now, I would have everybody stand up, and then I would have only the scribes keep standing and have everybody else sit down. And I would point out that the classroom is predominantly male, and then I'd point out the scribes are predominantly female. Here's the thing, I haven't given this class yet. However, I know this is the case, because I was one of the guys that made my wife do all the scribing for me when we worked on projects together. I know you're doing it. I know it's happened. The thing is, I didn't realize that this was as upsetting as it is. In today's fast-paced environment, where technology allows us to capture every detail with ease, it's essential that we all share the responsibility of note-taking during meetings. The burden of documenting discussions has traditionally and unfairly fallen on the women in our teams. In crafting these slides, I sought feedback from a lot of my colleagues. You don't know some of these people: Rachel, Sarah, Jenna. Rachel is my boss, Jenna is the woman I was just referring to, Sarah is my wife. But this also includes Gretchen Macht, Valerie Myers-Verdolozzi, and Laura Van Uffelen. Each one shared their frustration with the expectation that they, by default, should serve as the team's scribe. Each of them independently brought this issue up to me. This wasn't they talked to each other and they wanted me to know about this. I asked each of them independently, what microaggressions have you experienced the most? And this was top of the list. And they didn't talk to each other. They came to this on their own. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's a significant issue that affects team dynamics and individual stress levels. The pressure is immense because if they don't take notes right, crucial information may be missed, which could lead to the team's failure. It's important to recognize that note-taking is not just a mundane task. It's a critical skill that can predict the success of a project as much as, if not more than, technical prowess. Accurate and efficient note-taking ensures that every team member is on the same page and that action items and decisions are clearly documented for future reference. If you feel that your note-taking skills are not up to par, now is the time to improve them. Let's make a collective effort to distribute this task equally amongst all team members, regardless of gender or rank. By doing so, we not only alleviate the pressure on our colleagues, but also foster a more inclusive and collaborative team culture. Now, I'm not just talking about note-taking, guys, but this is probably the most definitive one that I'd be willing to bet most of you are guilty of. The next phenomenon, which is very upsetting, is what's called hearing privilege. Now again, we've all dealt with some form of this at some point in time from somebody, but it happens a lot more to women than men in general. And it's profoundly impeding on someone's career to have to deal with this. So I want you to reflect on the story I told you about Jenna, where I had to walk down the hall across the building just to repeat what she said. Now, I mean, I'm overweight. I could go for a walk, but the thing is, I shouldn't have to do that. This is a textbook example of hearing privilege. They just don't listen to her for some reason. And it's frustrating and inefficient, both for her and me. It's likely that many of you have experienced this selective hearing at some point, but consider this. What if the odds of you facing this from half of the population was 1 in 10? That is the typical experience women have. About 1 in 10 people that they talk to, specifically men, won't listen to them regardless of what they say, and they have to go get somebody else to help them. Further, in Jenna's case, she was forced to create a whole presentation, and she had to coach her male colleague on what to say during the presentation. Now, she said in the presentation, just in case, but the thing was, she had provided all of this information and this slide deck to the group of people she was talking to. And when this gentleman presented the slides that Jenna gave her, the entire executive board acted like it was the first time they saw it. This isn't a once-in-a-while story. My wife has a similar story. My boss has a similar story. I'd be willing to bet most of the women in this room have the same story. Do you know how infuriating that would be to have to deal with something like that? And from a societal standpoint, especially within engineering, the attitude isn't that's awful, that shouldn't be happening. It's that's par for the course. Deal with it, buttercup. And when this happens, it becomes an actual career barrier. If I were given the option to just say what I needed to say and go along with my day versus having to hold somebody else's hand and have them repeat what I'm saying, it would slow down my career quite a bit. And I've had to deal with people that forced me to do this. And I'll be honest with you, it did slow down my career. So how do you deal with this? And keep in mind, hearing privilege is a complex issue. And it should not be mistaken for someone being too busy to engage. And that does happen, unfortunately. It's critical to recognize that busyness is a common reality in our fast-paced work environment. Not every instance of a missed message is due to hearing privilege, yet distinguishing between the two can be nuanced. For example, when you approach your boss, who is invariably busy, it's vital to align your conversation with their objectives. Frame your needs in a way that shows that you're facilitating their goals, not hindering them. A boss under pressure may not have the bandwidth for perceived complications, but a well-articulated argument. To deliver what you're asking for, I need X, Y, and Z from you. You can cut through the noise and anxiety. Emails are your ally here. They allow you to generate a paper trail, providing clarity and accountability. Moreover, bringing in a colleague who are acknowledged by your boss can be a game changer. These allies can often echo your points, reinforcing them and prompting the question from your boss, why am I hearing this again? That is to say, if this conversation happens enough where you have to go get a friend or your colleague to say, hey, can you tell so-and-so this, that, and the other thing because he's not listening to me, eventually they will say something to your boss and make them listen. But you still need to be vigilant. When a pattern emerges where certain voices are consistently overlooked, this can indeed be a manifestation of hearing privilege and a subtle form of discrimination. If it's systemic, affecting career progression and opportunities, it's time to take the decisive action. This may mean seeking legal advice or finding a more equitable work environment. Remember to amplify others as well. If you notice a colleague being ignored, bring their points back to the conversation. This not only combats hearing privilege, but also fosters a culture of mutual support and inclusivity. Mansplaining. So, mansplaining is a specific form of condescension, where a man explains something to someone, typically a woman, in a patronizing or oversimplified manner. This behavior stems from an assumption that women have less understanding or knowledge about a subject, irrespective of their actual expertise or competence. Condescension, the broader category into which mansplaining falls, is characterized by attitudes or behaviors that come across as patronizing or demeaning. It involves talking down to someone, implying that they're less intelligent, knowledgeable, or competent than oneself. This is often demonstrated through overly simplifying explanations, providing explanations that are unnecessarily simplistic, implying that the listener cannot grasp complex information, giving advice without solicitation, especially on topics the recipient is well versed, employing a tone or choice of words that diminish the recipient's ideas or concerns as if they are self-evident or insightful, interrupting or speaking over someone, which suggests that the speaker's contributions are more important. The act of mansplaining often reflects unconscious biases and can result in the person on the receiving end feeling undervalued and disrespected. While those who mansplain may not always recognize the patronizing nature of their behavior, it perpetuates a dynamic of inequality and can contribute to a workplace environment where not all voices are equally heard or valued. Recognizing and addressing mansplaining is vital for fostering a culture of mutual respect. How do you combat mansplaining? So I realize I'm being a bit patronizing here in this slide, but the emphasis here is it's unfair to expect just the women in the room to have to deal with mansplaining. Both men need to avoid the act altogether, number one. And number two, when they observe it, they need to say something, because the honest reality is people who are perfectly happy to mansplain probably will keep doing it until another man says, fucking stop. While working at Newick, I encountered a scenario that underscored the value of solidarity and expertise in overcoming workplace biases. My background in chemical engineering often placed me in a unique position to address technical questions, including those about specialty chemicals like Sodazorb, used to purify air for divers. One day, a female colleague approached me for support in a meeting. Despite her extensive research and clear understanding of the product needed, she anticipated challenges in conveying her findings due to past experiences of mansplaining. The issue at hand was simple yet pivotal. The product, historically purchased from W.R. Grace, was now listed as Sodazorb by W.R. Grace, following a company acquisition. During the meeting, as predicted, our colleague embarked on a lengthy explanation of the chemical's use, a fact well known to my colleague, a diver herself. When the moment came, she referred to me for confirmation. Contrary to expectations, my brief affirmation of "yep" was all it took to halt the unnecessary lecture in its tracks. The incident is more than just a story. It's a testimony to the impact of collaboration and the recognition of individual expertise. It shows that when colleagues support each other, and affirm each other's knowledge, it can change the dynamics of the conversation and combat bias. It serves as a reminder that addressing behaviors like mansplaining is not just about individual action, but also about fostering an environment where support and respect are mutual. All right, hostile work environments. So before I get too much into this, I do need to tell a story. My mother was a 911 operator. She worked for a police station. Police station, even today, is predominantly men. Now, while she was there, on her very first day at the police station, my mother was bluntly informed about an officer notorious for making unwelcome advances towards female colleagues. This officer's behavior was known yet casually dismissed as something to be expected and tolerated in such an environment. This is a stark example of how normalized harassment can lead to a toxic workplace culture. Let's be unequivocally clear. Harassment is not a trivial matter of boys being boys. It's a serious issue that undermines the dignity and safety of individuals. Inaction or dismissal of such behavior not only damages morale, but also perpetuates the cycle of abuse. If you witness or experience harassment, report it. If the system fails to respond, do not hesitate to seek legal counsel. It's imperative to break the silence and ensure that every work environment is safe and respected for all. Next story. Mom was at the police station. Another woman at the station, Joycey, a paratrooper. She used to run Leap Fest, if you know what that is, shared with my mother a disheartening perspective on survival in military and paramilitary institutions. She outlined 3 archetypes that women were expected to embody to fit in: the bitch, the slut, and the lesbian. The categorization is not only derogatory, but also reductive, forcing women to narrow roles based on gender biases. Joycey's own identification was as a lesbian should not have been linked to a workplace survival strategy. We must reject these harmful stereotypes and work towards an environment that values individuals for their professional contribution, not for how well they fit into prejudicial archetypes. All right, sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a grave violation of workplace ethics and personal dignity. It often begins subtly with inappropriate comments about sex and can escalate to physical contact and spreading harmful rumors. This progression is not just about the act themselves, but about exerting control and testing boundaries. At Newark, where the majority of the Navy personnel are young adults, repeated sexual harassment training at Newark, where the majority of Navy personnel are young adults, repeated sexual harassment training underscores a critical point. No form of physical contact should be initiated without explicit consent. The notion that someone must verbally fend off unwelcome advances is in itself unacceptable. You shouldn't have to say, "Don't touch me," the first time. Any such behavior warrants immediate reporting. It's crucial to recognize that what starts as seemingly harmless probing will escalate to assault when not swiftly addressed. Management must take a proactive stance, ensuring a safe environment for all, employing and fostering a culture where harassment is never minimized or overlooked. Retaliation. So, retaliation comes in many forms. And need to be clear, all forms are illegal. The reason that retaliation occurs tends to be as a form of control, punish you. I don't want you doing that again. Retaliation occurs when an employer takes adverse action against an employee for engaging in legal protected activity like reporting discrimination. It can manifest as job demotion, salary reduction, job or shift reassignment, or even more subtle forms such as exclusion from meetings or isolation from colleagues. Being assertive about one's rights or reporting wrongdoing should not lead to punishment. Retaliation is illegal and against the principle of fair, equitable workforce. It can create a climate of fear that discourages employees from speaking out against injustices, allowing discrimination, harassment, and stereotyping to persist unchecked. It is vital for management to foster an environment where employees feel safe to raise concerns without the threat of retribution. This includes clear policy training and a transparent complaint process. Employees should be encouraged and empowered to speak out against injustices. They must be assured that their concerns will be taken seriously and that protection from retaliation is a priority for the organization. There are laws in place, such as Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, that protect employees from retaliation. Employees should be aware of these protections and the steps to take if they believe they're being retaliated against. So, at this point, I want to stop and open a dialogue. Has anyone here experienced any form of retaliation? If we were having this in class right now, we're at an open discussion. But if you are watching this online, this is the point of the discussion where you should be sending me an email discussing it. So, stereotypes are damaging. When faced with stereotypes, such as the notion that Irish people are heavy drinkers, it's crucial to not meet defensiveness with defensiveness. Instead, remain composed to facilitate an open dialogue. Address the stereotype's origin and clarify how it misrepresents the diversity and richness of Irish culture and individuals. Pivot the conversation by drawing parallels to other generalized beliefs, which can help illustrate the absurdity and harm of stereotypes. Offer counterexamples or personal anecdotes that debunk the stereotype, reinforcing that individuals should not be judged based on broader generalizations. Encourage others to reflect on their own beliefs and behaviors, fostering a more inclusive and sensitive environment. All right. Racial bias and performance evaluations and exclusion. Unfortunately, this still happens. And to address it, you need to accurately document it. This includes dates, specific feedback received, goal sets, and examples of work that demonstrate your performance. This is an instance where if somebody is going to be moving the goalpost, this is when they're going to do it. And if they are doing it, you need to document it. When presenting your concerns, whether your evaluator or legal counsel, clearly communicate the facts as essential. When presenting your concerns, whether to your evaluator or legal counsel, clear communication of the facts is essential. Avoid vague statements and stick to the evidence. Maintain a calm demeanor even when discussing something as sensitive as racial bias. People are more receptive to what you say when you speak with composure. Offer possible solutions that could include additional training or evaluation. Offer possible solutions that could include additional training for evaluators on unconscious bias, more transparent evaluation processes, or even a reevaluation. Keep track of the progress made after your initial report. If no changes occur, determine the next steps, which may include more formal complaints or seeking external support. All right, overcoming stereotypes and cultural barriers. So all of these are career limiters. Stereotypes can place unjust limitations on careers of women and racial minorities by pigeonholing their capabilities and potential. They can also negatively influence workplace dynamics, leading to a lack of opportunities for leadership and growth for these groups. Cultural barriers within the workplace can inhibit the exchange of ideas and stifle innovation, as they prevent the full participation of all group members. These barriers can also affect employee morale and job satisfaction, leading to a less productive and engaged workforce. Creating awareness and providing education on detrimental effects of stereotypes are crucial first steps in dismantling them. Implementing policies that actively discourage discriminatory practices and promote inclusivity is essential for a healthy work environment. Leadership must play an active role in breaking down these barriers by setting an example and holding the organization accountable to higher standards of diversity and inclusion. All right, work-life balance and microaggressions. So there's gender expectations that are unfair. Women often face societal expectations to manage home and work life, leading to a double shift that can impact their careers, career progression, and mental health. One example is one thing that my wife had to deal with to some extent when she had our kids. So before she got pregnant with Teddy, a lot of people she worked with looked down on her because she had been married for a while and still didn't have any kids, which was really, to be quite honest, none of their goddamn business. But they did treat her poorly. They more or less said that she's not doing her job to society by not having kids, which isn't a true statement. The only obligation you have to society is the promise to be ethical. And having kids doesn't make you any more or less ethical. In fact, not having kids allows you to be ethical a lot easier. You're a lot less stressed out. And then my wife had kids. She got pregnant, and all of the things that are associated with getting pregnant happened. Her time off. She couldn't lift anything at work, and she worked at a factory. The same people that treated her like she wasn't doing her job for society was now giving her a hard time because she was asking for special accommodations. She couldn't walk around for long periods of time because she was pregnant. When she finally delivered Teddy, she needed time off. When she was working from home, and trust me, when she first started working from home, there was plenty for her to do at home. They made a big stink about her not driving to work to do it. And there was this weird double standard because it was the same people. It wasn't like one group of people were like, you need to have kids, and the other group of people being like, oh my God, this is so inconvenient. It was the same group of people. And they didn't see the double standard. They didn't understand what they were doing was rude. Next is racial minorities may experience additional pressures from cultural expectations or community responsibilities that are not always recognized or accommodated in the workplace. This is another just asking for time off. So I grew up in South Kingstown, and South Kingstown has a much higher Jewish population than the rest of the state. And so our school, our high school, went out of their way to accommodate all of those religious holidays. But in doing so, they had to drop a handful of other ones. Now, nobody really minded this too much, but I have been in work situations where somebody was just a different religion than what the federal government practiced. And when they had to ask for time off, people made the big stink. And that's inappropriate, especially when they're doing all of the things they're supposed to be doing to ask for that time off. Microaggressions are subtle, often unintentional forms of discrimination that can make the workplace hostile and affect the well-being of gender and racial groups. While they may seem minor individually, the cumulative effect of microaggressions can lead to a significant impact on job satisfaction, performance, and retention. Adopting flexible work policies can help all employees manage their work-life balance more effectively, acknowledging and accommodating the diverse needs of different groups. Regular training on diversity and inclusion can help reduce microaggressions, fostering a more supportive and understanding work environment. Creating support systems within the workplace, such as affinity groups and mentoring groups, can provide a platform for sharing experiences and strategies to manage these challenges.